I was actually wearing this before joining, but then my wife said, please take some other.
Hey, that's good. It looks like pixel art, so I'm all for that.
I was actually about to write to you, are you going full Christmas or are you just basic nerd? And we go with nerd, I think.
Yeah.
My name is Mads, and I'm called Laumania on YouTube and Twitter for that matter. And I'm 38 years old, 2 kids, wife, living in Denmark. And I have been working on a game called Fireworks Mania for the past 3 years, I think now. It was released last year, end of 2020, and we are now in the end of 2021. And it's been a good year, and it was more successful than I was hoping for. But prior to that, I have been doing game development in my spare time since 2005 or something like that. With a lot of, because then you get kids and stuff like that. So there's these breaks where you don't have the same amount of time. But it's been an ongoing thing creating small games from text-based little dice games in the beginning, and all the way up to something like Fireworks Mania and mobile games, and been in all these engines before Unity and Unreal was something you could use, but always as a part-time game developer, you could say.
Yeah, so what do you do for a day job then?
Yeah, so I have my own company as an IT consultant. So I work for clients. I say clients, but for the past many years, it's been one client full-time. They are in the other side of Denmark, so I work from home for the most of the time. That combines pretty good with spare time development, because then I can work from 8 to 4 or something like that for them, and then shut down that and then start on the game dev slot afterwards. So I've found a pretty good schedule there that works for me.
Do you find it difficult to balance switching between the jobs?
Actually not. I know a lot of people have that, and also with with COVID and a lot of people being forced to work from home. Somebody discovered that it was very nice for them. Somebody discovered that it was not for them at all. I started working from home in 2015. It turns out to work great for me. I'm apparently pretty good at kind of, keeping it locked in. So when I'm at work, I'm at work. When I'm off, I'm off. Of course, I make lunch and I go to the bathroom and make coffee and stuff like that during the day, but I don't do all the other stuff. I first of all, I can't do that, and I don't do that, which is a little annoying for my wife sometimes, asking me, oh, can't you just take this and this? Nope, I can't. I'm at work. Be silent. I'm in a meeting. But it works pretty good for me. And then with that, a small break after that, almost not every day, but almost every day after work, I shut down, get a new cup of coffee, take a little break, and then back working like 1-2 hours on the game until we have dinner. And then it's kind of, kids time, wifey time and all that. This kind of way of working where I have a side project and my main job, and almost always had that. So I also practice for like 15, 16 years. So it's not like something I just woke up one day and did, because it can be stressful at times. So you have to figure out, how to do it without being too stressed. For instance, the game is something I can always, not do if I feel a little stressed, where my day job, I cannot skip that because they're kind of depending on me. I know my players and stuff like that is also depending on me with the game, but it's not like a day-to-day dependency. I can take off a few days or a week. The game still works.
Have you ever thought about reducing your day job time, or to focus more on the game? Or
it haven't been a possibility. Now with Fireworks Mania, in theory I could do it, but the problem is with a game is it's going fine right now, but it's not like necessarily a consistent income for a long period of time, and I have a family that I need to provide for. So I actually don't want to. I like the switching between what some would say boring enterprise integration development stuff, but that shift is pretty good, actually. I don't know if I could be full-time, but I've just seen, I think, on YouTube, some people, going full-time or having this goal of being full-time. And then when they do, it seems like they are kind of stressed out, because then it's the main thing, where now it's kind of a side thing. So I can turn it on and off, as I have energy for it. where if it's the main thing, maybe the pressure becomes too big. But it depends on people, of course. But I have no plans actually to go full-time indie. If, for instance, if my client was saying right now, okay, we are done now, you are free here from the 1st of January, of course I would spend time on the game because it's going fine right now. But it's not something I would go to my client and say, well, I'm stopping here at summer because I need to work on the game. That's not my plan.
Interesting, yeah, because I've like through the years, I've had a very similar experience when it comes to. I did a lot of game asset development and selling it in the asset store, and then
I know we get back to that.
Oh yeah, we'll get back to that. And just when you hit and you start selling and you start to generate an income, and I know exactly what you mean when you describe that even though it's at the moment there's a window of a sound income, but you don't know if that's going to continue or not. And I think it's very good for other indie developers as well to recognize that even if the game starts to sell, it's just that uncertainty. So it's easy, I think, for a lot of people to quit and focus on it full time.
But that's actually also something I try to do. Again, I will not say I will never go full-time indie. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I could do it now, but I choose not to because I don't want to. And actually, one of the things I actually wanted to also do with my YouTube channel without being, kind of a marketing thing for the game, and also turned out to also be kind of a motivating factor also actually to have people follow along, giving feedback. And I have a very nice community really that are very supportive. So that's really, really, that I wasn't expecting that to be so motivating that it turns out to be. But one of the things that I wanted to show with my channel was also that, first of all, you don't have to be in your beginning of 20s to be a game developer. You can have a family and stuff like that. And I also wanted to show that you can build games you can build good games in your spare time. It's just a matter of scoping. And then it turned out to also be kind of a successful game, but I didn't know that when I started out. But it was also my idea to show that you can be kind of a dad, building games in your spare time, having a YouTube channel, and having a full-time day job on the side. Or not on the side, but having a full-time day job and then have the game dev on the side. What I was seeing on YouTube was a lot of these younger people, which is totally fine because it makes sense in their life. They are maybe living at home or just moved out, so they have all the time in the world to do it. So that is where you should focus. But I think there is a lot of you and I, a little older, family and stuff like that. They want to do the same, but they was like, I can't do it. I have this day job. I can't, I work in Walmart all day. I can't do a game. Well, you maybe can. It's just a matter of, being, you have to take something else away, of course, because there's only 24 hours in the day. So you have to prioritize job, family, and game dev, and then down prioritize other things. And I'm not saying everybody can do it because you have to be very, strict and discipline to be able to do it, and not another tutorial challenge, because I can't compare with your 10-minute challenges and all the other stuff. There are so many good tutorial channels, so I never wanted to do that. I only do tutorials on modding my own game now, and if I find something that I can find a tutorial on, like for instance playing a sound at a particular at the position that a particle is spawned or dies in a Unity particle system, for instance. That's not something anybody, for some reason, have done before. I couldn't find it, at least. So I had to figure out my own way of doing that, because I needed that in the game.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the game itself? It's called Fireworks Mania, and a little bit more about the game itself, how you came up with the idea.
Well, it actually started pretty much 3 years ago around this day, where my oldest son was kind of getting into an age where fireworks were interesting. He was all in on the, real world fireworks. But of course, with the limitation that real fireworks have, it's dangerous, you need to be careful, and you can only do certain things. But he was kind of interesting, and that was fine. He asked me if I could help him find a game where he could play around with fireworks, like on Steam or Epic or something like that. And I was like, yeah, we can do that. And we searched and stuff like that, and then we found, something called Fireworks Simulator, for instance, which is it's more kind of a strategy game, or more like setting up a fireworks, like with your mouse, where you pick, I want this to go off at 15 seconds and be green and blah 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 to music and stuff like that. But right when he saw that trailer, he was like, well, I don't want that, I want to be there, I want to play around with it. So I was like, okay, a first person thing. Okay. And we searched around, couldn't find any. And as I just said, I've been doing games, mainly 2D games actually, for the past 15 years, whatever, prior to this. After he kind of asked for that and we couldn't find any, I was thinking over the coming days, I was thinking, well, it can't be that hard to make some rocket, fly, explode, particles, da 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 da. I haven't at that point done a 3D game before, but I kind of knew it would have to be 3D, so I was also starting to investigate, okay, low poly, I can maybe do that. And also later on, for performance reasons, it's good to be low poly, so I have more room for all the effects and stuff like that. So then I sat down at the beginning of January, did a little POC, proof of concept on it, and I couldn't find any rockets for fireworks rockets, so I was using missiles to to fire off. But the idea was you can walk up to these missiles, turn them on, they will fly up and explode. And then I showed it to my kids, and they was like, yeah, I can try this. And it was super simple at that point. You couldn't really do anything. You couldn't explode and you couldn't do anything. And then after like 10, 15 minutes, I was like, okay, I get it. You like it. Let me get my computer back so I can continue. And I had a hard time getting it back. Where usually when I showed them my other games, they was like, yeah, fine. And then move on. So at that point, I was kind of like, if they like it, they have to be other kids and grown-up men, for that matter, that might find it interesting. And then I started researching more, and as further as I went into it, I could see that it checked off more and more of these success boxes, like find a niche, for instance, like. So it's easier to make the best game in a niche where there's only a few games. Where if I was, it's hard to make a battle royale. If I should make a new game, make a battle royale would be a bad idea because I'm pretty sure I can't here from my basement compete with Fortnite. So that fireworks thing, because there was no other games and still isn't, because it is a small niche thing. It was not easy, but it was easier to make, the best game in that category. So it ended up, and it still is, basically a physics-based sandbox simulator game where you play around with fireworks. Because then I showed it to somebody else after a kind of a year of development, and I showed it some physics where you blow up some boxes with some of our friends, and I showed them to that. And then the moment the rocket hit these boxes and exploded and the boxes went boom, she was like, that's it. And then I could see, okay, I need a little more explosion. So on the surface, it's a fireworks game where you set up fireworks, play around. And then what often happens when I'm watching YouTube videos and people playing is that at some point a rocket flies in the wrong direction, end up somewhere else, explode something, and then they discover, it have an impact on the world. And then mayhem starts and people have a very good time exploding everything. Apparently it never gets old, exploding something.
I tried the game before the release, I think, last year. And then I remember doing a little video of it. It's probably a year and a half ago now. Time flies so fast. And then you gave me a Steam key, and I've been meaning to play it for so long because I was going to promote it a little bit last year. But my I don't know, time management and things to do, like you said, it flips out and developing the game. But then I played it quite a bit yesterday, and I came to the same conclusion. It's funny that you should mention that, because I started setting off all the rockets and everything and looking at them. And then I go, these propane tanks, I'll chuck a few of those out. I wonder how many. And then the game development brain comes, I wonder if it can cope with it, like 1,000 explosions or something.
Yeah.
So I think I can imagine that's like a progression within the game.
Yeah, that's something I didn't plan to, but it ended up being, apparently is for YouTubers and streamers. It for some of them, it has become a goal to see if they can crash the game. So that's kind of their goal, And Lyric had a stream at some point, a big streamer that I didn't know before, but he's apparently a big streamer. He had an awesome on-purpose ending of his stream where something just exploded and he was just screaming and it just cut off. And then people on Twitter afterward was just like, best ending ever. Because it was just like, woof, and then he was screaming and then the stream just froze. Compared to how many times the game have crashed on people, I think I got one message or something like that of people saying, "Oh, it crashed," and then it was often something different because people know when they start filling up a city with propane tanks, there is a chance that the game crashes.
As a game developer, when it switches the focus a lot, then like you said, and it switches from the fireworks part to blowing things up, what's your thought of that as a developer?
What I've actually been very, very keen on is keeping it on these two things because when I saw the explosion thing, I was very aware of not going too much in that direction, if that makes sense, because it is still a fireworks game, and so I basically have I see it as I have two kind of players: the ones that want to do beautiful shows, and the ones that want to just have fun and blow stuff up. And some players are in both categories at different times. These are the two kind of players that I'm trying to satisfy. And that for the developer tips and tricks, as I said in the beginning, the scope of stuff, keep it down. And when you get a game out just to a few people, what you will notice is that you will get tons of feedback and ideas. Many of them very good ideas. It's your responsibility as the developer of only picking the ones that you, first of all, can do in a reasonable time and that add the most value to the game for the effort of putting it in. Because if I did everything that people wrote to me, I'm pretty sure nobody will buy the game. It would be too complicated. And that's another thing I have spent a lot of time, and that's weird for non-developers, but making things simple is actually the hardest thing to do. Making things intuitive and easy to use is much harder than you think. And that's something I also spend a lot of time on. Also, because I tried some fireworks games, for instance, there was, I can't remember the name, Fireworks, no, not a Pyro something, a VR game. And you could fuse things together in that. But the problem with that was that you had a fuse in your hand, like a long fuse, what's a straight fuse, and then you have to kind of, with your hand in VR, aim it, and it has to be exactly right at the exactly right time and point to work. So that meant that you spent 90% of your time fiddling with the physics of the engine and making that fuse in the right place, where you basically just want to move on. So you didn't want to spend time on a fuse. That was not a fuse placing simulator, right? It was a fireworks one. So when I got to the fusing point, I was like, it needs to be super easy to do. And I actually have more stuff in the to do to make it even easier in some cases. So in the game now, you just pick the fuse tool, point at a fireworks, and you can select between 4 different fuses. And then you just aim and click or even hold down the mouse button and all the fuses, and it just like, you can just zip them together like that in a second. So it becomes a easy thing to do that is fast because you're not there for fusing stuff. You are there for setting it off. And I can, of course, prove a lot of stuff. But it's just an example of a thing that I saw in another game working really bad. Or I thought at least you spent too much time on the wrong thing. So it's something that I changed in my game based on that.
There's a delay, right? So when you fuse something, you have to hold it in a little bit before it lights the fuse. That if you swipe it after the delay is gone, can you light more at the same time then?
The thing is, when you with the torch turn on, or you want to start or light a fuse, it's also a little detail. In the first version, maybe you played, maybe you just had to click it once basically, and it just ignited and it took off. A fuse actually have an ignition force that it needs to get to, and that's a feeling thing. Because you have to hold it a little longer now to turn it on, the satisfaction of it going off is actually a little bigger. Just because you have to spend a little more time turning it on, so it feels a little more real to some extent. But when the connecting fuse is getting to a fuse, it actually just sets off instantly. So, when it gets to the second one, it actually goes off right away. You don't have to wait on that fuse. In real life, I guess you would have to wait on that fuse, but I think it was done like this to make it a little more easier to time stuff. So you don't have to wait on the fuse going over there and then wait for the fuse and then, yeah.
As a new player, when you come into a game, and when I've done my Ludum Dare games as well, it's quite, like, as a developer, it's easy to get like, oh, people will get this or this will work. I'm pretty sure it'll work. And then when you see people playing the game, you realize, and it's the same for us when we do Line War now, it's like you can never take anything for granted that people will just understand or see something. Fireworks Mania is 100% a sandbox game, right?
It's 100% sandbox game, but actually one thing that I also did was that I released a demo of the game pretty early on. After a year, I released a demo. And then luckily for me, people had a need to put these videos on YouTube, which was kind of a goldmine for me for feedback. You know, sitting here watching a kid or a guy or a girl or whatever play the game, speaking what they were thinking without me being able to interfere with them, is just a gold mine of feedback. Because first of all, you see all the things that they miss that you were thinking they would miss, and you, as you said before, that your thought was kind of intuitive. So like for instance, I saw they couldn't figure out the controls. Well, they could figure out how to walk because that's pretty standard how you move around in a mouse keyboard game. But you know the tools and how you do that. So that's why I added these tooltips to the right, which some people also miss. But the majority of people see it when they run into a problem and don't know what to do. They start looking at the screen and they see that, and then tap and Q. Okay, and then they kind of get it. Another thing I saw with these videos was that they all went straight to the gas station, trying to fill it with fireworks and blow it up, expecting it to blow up. And it didn't blow up in the beginning. So that was also something I was able to see, you know, from that demo. I could see, okay, people go there, expect that. I better add that because it's something people expect. And I'm still doing that, you know, seeing how people are playing and then adding what I think makes sense, you know, to add to the game in the context of the gaming. It's still just a sandbox because I was seeing people spending time in these videos on chasing down things that could explode. Basically, you know, what can break, because not everything can break, because it takes time to make things breakable and also performance, yada, yada, yada. Another thing, I put in Easter eggs, a few Easter eggs. For instance, in the city or in the town, there is a like 10, 20 meter go hidden somewhere. And that was actually also added because people like this, you know, discovering the environments. Because they were so keen on finding these stuff, even though it's just a sandbox game with no real gameplay, I also added a bunch of hidden fireworks or locked fireworks that you have to find first for them to unlock in your inventory. I also added another Easter egg, which was a big, you know, bomb. It's pretty known now in the game, but in the beginning was like, there was a video of a guy called Tim something that did world's largest shell, which is this round thing that shoots up of a tube. And I was doing a video and I did that shell in the game for that video. And people was like, oh, we need that in the game. And I was like, no, it's too heavy. It was way too big. It was totally unrealistic big compared to the other stuff. And then later on, I changed it a bit and then was like, okay, I didn't say anything. I just put it in. And I can't remember if that was in the demo or in the real game. But I just placed it in a pawn shop. You couldn't spawn or anything. There was just one. But it was just placed in there. And seeing people finding this treasure was like priceless, and they couldn't control themselves when it just exploded the entire sky with this thing. So that's also something people like. And then later on I changed it on so now you can actually spawn it, and the latest version, this version I just did now, I did another major one that I cannot spoil where it's placed, but you have to find it and you might have to do something to find it. But people like these small hints, because I just wrote in the last line, I think, of the news, like, and I might have hidden another fireworks.
Do people put a lot of content up on YouTube playing the game? Do you get a lot of let's play videos, and how's that working?
When I did this game, as I said, I've done games before. Many of them, you know, I've ended up releasing and then being so tired and, you know, worn out when I release them that I can't think about marketing or doing anything. I just want it out and then, it's done. And funny enough, that ends off with the game not doing very well. So this time I was thinking, okay, I'm going to do different. I'm going to start a YouTube channel to get, you know, the word out. I'm going to be more active on Twitter. My idea was that this game is funny to look at. It's good for content creators because there is a lot of funny moments because things go wrong. So it's good for and it can be creative because it's sandbox. But at the same time, I was also hoping that people will see it and then say to themselves, first of all, I want to try it. It looks really fun. And why didn't he do X, Y, and Z? I want to do that. So people hopefully also buy it because, you know, you and I don't make much money only having YouTubers play the game. We need kind of more people to buy it. So I could also see that this game kind of, as I said in the beginning, checking off these check marks. A problem with a story-based game is that if you've seen a YouTuber play a story-based game, most likely you're not going to play it yourself because you've seen the plot and you've seen everything. So that's kind of a bummer with that. But in a game like this, or a game like yours, where you can play it again and again and again, it's different. It's much better for streamers and content creators. And it turned out, as I released it last year, and also before I released it, I could see. Yeah, actually, let's go back like in a year before I released it. I released a demo, and people just, again, I don't know exactly why, but I guess it's because it's kind of a unique game. Like there was no other Fireworks game, so people wanted to share, and people also want to share their creations on YouTube. Like I did this show, I did this Christmas show, I did this, and this went wrong and stuff like that. I don't have any count, but there are many thousands videos of Fireworks Mania on YouTube now, and also a lot of the big guys also based on marketing, of course. I used a marketing thing to send out to whatever they have on their mailing list, but I actually think it might have happened more or less organic anyway, because what I'm seeing, what I saw and are still seeing is that it started from these 1 to 10 subscriber channels doing, and then it apparently grows, because then the bigger YouTuber sees it, and the bigger YouTuber sees it, and the bigger YouTuber sees it, and that you can't plan that. It's not like I'm sitting here being a big brain and I planned that, but it was not totally coincident either, because I actually did the game, so it was supposed to be fun to watch and fun to play. But of course, luck is a big part of it too. And then COVID happened right as I was about to launch it. So I don't think it hurt the game. People were sitting at home, not being at Christmas and New Year's parties. There was a big YouTuber with 2 million playing it. And then like the day after, I got a DM on Twitter from a guy with 4 million subscribers. Can I get a key? Can I get a key? Can I get a key? And I had to say to him, well, yeah, you get it. You will get it here when I'm doing a small release, and then you get a key. Okay, fair enough. And then he just did it. All the big guys, 5,000-10,000 subscribers and above or whatever, they don't play the game you send to them. In many cases, that's my experiences. Jacksepticeye, for instance, played my game. I don't think he would play it if I sent him an email with my game, because I'm pretty sure he get tons of that. He won't even see that email. But of course, he's a big YouTuber, just like everybody else. He see trends on YouTube, and of course, he sees something that looks fun. He want to play out, and also, of course, want to join a trend. Of course, he's not stupid, so he also played it. But it was not because I told him to.
You said you released a demo, right? So was that a free demo that you released, and was that via Steam?
Yeah, I had a short period of a demo on itch, but then quickly I moved it to Steam. And that's another developer tip: learn Steam backend early on. And if you saw my release list, you would think I have had a game out for like 20 years or something like that, because I use the backend of Steam a lot to release and have private branches and stuff like that. Yeah, from that demo was out, I used it on the real games side, you could say. I released like every second week, third week or something, but only to myself. I was the only player of it, but I still released it on Steam to get experience, so that when I launched it and when I needed to do the first update, I had no doubt about how it worked. I know exactly how it worked. I know that, okay, to force the as a player to force the update, I have to close Steam and open it again, because else it won't refresh and stuff like that. And how it works on the back end. So doing that early on was also pretty good, and because you get a lot of experience with how it works, and the pitfalls and stuff like that. So that's a very good thing to do too. Even if it's only yourself or maybe a friend or your kids or whatever who has it, it's still very, very well to do it that way, and also helps you set up kind of a release management. How do you develop your game? I'm using GitHub projects, and with just a basic with these a Kanban board, where I drag things from to do, in progress, done. It's not like it's some fancy stuff with auto deployment and stuff like that. It's just, I would like to get there because I am a professional developer, so I would like to have it more automated. But it's pretty low key and pretty simple to do. And I do releases all the time in closed beta or for myself or now for the actual game and stuff like that. When I released this game, it was not done. It was done enough, which is another very, very important point. Release your game, Stefan, when it's good enough. the thing is, and all developers do that, you want this, just the 2 last features. When they are done, re-release. And while doing the first one, you discover 2 more. So when these 3 are done, then we release. And then you do 1 more, and then you have 5 more, because that ended up being blah, 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 blah. You just... So there's no right or wrong answer to that, but it's a very, very typical thing that goes wrong. And I've done it myself 100 times. And did I release my game too early or too late? Or I don't know. Also, because it is a sandbox game, it was a little easier for me to release it, at some point when it was good enough, knowing that I could just update it. And that was also based on the experience I had with Steam. I figured out, okay, it's super easy to update, and it's pretty solid, and it's pretty straightforward. So there was no issue with updating. It was not like in the 90s or 80s where you had to get it on a disc, and that was it. Back then, it was a little more fair to be like that. This new update I released on the 6th, and that's 10 days. And I think I have done 4 or 5 updates since then. Getting back to developer tips, which is staying motivated, at least for me. Of course, it's individual. But for me, your game is based on a million of tiny steps of success. So you rename that file. That's one thing. You are closer to being done. You refactored how the input system works. That's another one. Bigger checkbox, but another checkbox. You finally get to clean up that old asset pack you didn't ended up using. That's another check mark. And doing all that and having a little board on either a piece of paper or on a Kanban board and moving it, and actually maybe once a week, every second week, do a release. You make a build, you increase the version number, and maybe you have 2, 1, or 5, or 10, but you did something, and it's actually, your game is now better than it was before. And these tiny steps of success, each of them give you a little fuel to do the next one. Because the worst thing that can happen, and I've also fallen in that to myself, is that you run into a problem, and then you are focused on that problem, meaning you spent maybe 3 weeks of spare time developing on a problem that, of course, is important, but it's so demotivating working so many hours, especially because it's often for game developers like me in the spare time, it's evening hours and stuff like that. It's so demotivating spending so much time on something that doesn't move the game at all. So sometimes I just say, okay, I won't use that word, but something with F, it, away, let's do something that I can make work. And then I switch, do a new piece of Fireworks or something simple. And then it often happens that because you are putting that problem away, you suddenly, while doing the dishes or something like that, you get, that's why it's not working. And then the next time slot you get back and say, oh, that's it. And then you end up actually fixing that big problem much faster because you're not so into it. It's something I recently discovered myself that is actually how I work. These small steps of success motivates because you are moving forward. It might be tiny steps, but it's still forward. And I think the most, burnout and demotivation is happening when you are standing still. You feel like you're doing something, but the game isn't moving.
We have a very similar experience when we develop Line War in that sense. We try to balance it, so we have a lot of the features that are the low-hanging fruit and quick wins, so you actually feel that you're making progression, whether it's visual or something with the AI that improves. And then we sort of build up the momentum to get to a point where we know there's something really heavy to tackle. That means that the game won't build for a while because you're like replacing like the map generation in my case, or if it's a big AI refactoring that my code dev has to do. And sometimes, like you said as well, you get to a point where, okay, this is too much of a block for the time being. So we've come to the point as well where we'll have to stash that and just say, okay, we'll have to come back to this at some point in the future, but now is not the time. That's a common pitfall as well, especially if you don't work in a structured way, like you described with a little Kanban board or something that keeps track of your tasks and your progression. It's so easy to put that aside and try to do it without it, but I think it's really beneficial to keep, especially a longer project, moving forward all the time. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and it's also my point is also that it's the mindset of every little commit you do, because you're of course using a control system. Wink, wink. Every little commit you do is a success in the right direction forward. Even if you delete something, that's also moving things forward, because then you cleaned up or whatever. So my point is just that it's the mindset of all these tiny things. Really, like, renaming a class. That is also, if you can rename it so the name makes more sense for you now, that's also progress. Because it's a very little thing to do, and it takes like 2 seconds once you have come up with the right name for it. So that's just my point, that you have to see these small things as a success and a step in the right direction, because that little fuels the next one. If you are just sitting from day one waiting for the accepted guy to play your game, and that's your goal, you will burn out. You have to have goals, like much smaller goals that you can work towards, because else you will burn out. That's the same as going into game development for making money. You will also for sure burn out before earning any money. You have to be slightly crazy, and then some of us are lucky to make some money. I have done many games and had a joy of making them without making any money. So you have to find it fun, even with no money. Remember, I spent 2 years of my spare time making 0 money, only spending money on assets like Fireworks pack, little historical time. That's where we know each other from. You had this Fireworks sound pack, which was very hard to find. That was also something I discovered early on, that the sounds were super important, not only in a Fireworks game, but in games in general. I didn't think about that before, but sounds are so important, especially in a Fireworks game. So finding the right sounds was very important and very hard. And then I stumbled upon a package from somebody called Imphenzia. They're having a Fireworks pack. So I bought that, and then we had a chat back and forth, and that's actually from where we know each other. And then the YouTube channel kicked off afterwards.
yeah, you knew it before.
But I didn't have anything to do with
It's a bit of a flashback as well. I was just thinking, because we're getting close to New Year's again. And I think maybe it was 2016 or something, 15, 16, 17 or something.
Yeah, later you made a video about it.
Yeah,
from when you made the...
Yeah, because I did record everything, and I brought a friend with me out. And like you said, they have to be a little bit crazy and try different things. And that's been my 20 years as well. I've created a lot of small games, and then all the time, because I was asked the other day, have you actually released a game? They asked me, who's claiming to be like an indie dev and stuff. And I've done 13 Ludum Dare games. I've done one game that was that made it to the Play Store called Parking Spaces, that got taken off because I didn't update the privacy policy, so I need to do that. But it's I always get to the point. I enjoy creating the games, and I enjoy prototyping them. And then it's a good thing that prototyping is so fast nowadays, because I often get to the point where I'll create something and it turns out that it's not that fun to play. So that's my biggest challenge, to find something. I tend to focus that it'll look good or sound good or something, but it's very difficult to actually make something that plays and is fun to play. And you mentioned earlier about your children getting your hands on it, and you saw that they're actually they want to play it and they enjoy it. And I've stuck a lot of my games as well. I'll show them and they go, huh, okay. And they'll just move. And that's it's good in a way, because they're truthful in that way. If they don't like it, they don't have any problem saying it. They don't feel like they're obliged to say, like, well, now that they're getting a little bit older, they're starting to, well, some people might like it. Yeah.
Everything I show my wife is bad.
Yeah,
boring. She don't care.
And then I've had a few games, like the Ludum Dare games, where I did like a little alien that runs. It's basically like a Frogger clone type of thing. But it was then my youngest daughter, she was laughing her head off, and I noticed that they were playing it for the fact that they wanted to play it. So I think maybe that's a tip for well, I guess most parents that are developing would have noticed that already. But
Depending on your game, if you are doing fantasy,
oh yeah,
what is it called? A scary horror game, maybe that's not something you should
maybe
test.
true. Or like Line War, that's true as well. They don't really necessarily
maybe not
like that.
kid,
So
yeah,
no,
exactly.
that's true. Actually, good point.
But actually getting the right audience and getting your game to the right audience is very important, and that's bringing back to the YouTube channel, because I didn't do that haven't done that before. I've built a community before in some other not game related stuff, so and in Danish and stuff like that, back when there was forums on websites, but now it's Discord, everything's Discord. So I had a little experience in building community, so I also knew that was important for various reasons. Getting just a few people interested in your game is very motivating, because they will come back saying, looks good, oh, why isn't that, and just getting some kind of feedback from somebody that you don't know in real life, is very motivating. And having a YouTube channel where you force yourself to do devlogs, both because I like doing this video editing, I just have too little time in the day, but I actually like doing these videos. But it's for people's purpose, but also for my own purpose, because I also like going back and see, okay, I actually got this far since like a year ago or something like that. It's also motivating, to go back and see where you were like a year ago, half a year ago. Where was I going with this? Getting feedback from people, basically. That is very, very motivating too. And YouTube channel can be that, and that's where you can start building an audience and a community. And then in my case also, as I moved on, got the Discord up and running, I also knew that if this game kicked off and became successful just a little, I'm one guy doing it in my spare time, so I cannot support everybody. So I have to build a community with a couple of people, core people helping out. And luckily I have that now, and they are so awesome to help out newcomers, asking the same questions, and then they just know where to send them to what video so they can get the answer and all that. So they are helping out a lot. I don't have time for that. I have to build the game.
So I just actually realized that you had a Discord yesterday when I was looking. And how do you find how much time do you manage to allocate to doing stuff in Discord and managing that community? And
I don't do that much actually, because I have some good modders that help ban all these crazy people that comes in. I don't spend that much time on Discord, and actually I'm not even on the Discord every day, because when I get in there, it's usually a time consuming thing, because I just end up scrolling and starting to respond to people, and then people see I'm there and then they start responding. Of course, I understand that, but it takes so much of my time. So I actually have to not be in there all the time to be able to make the game. I spent time in the beginning also to learn, and I'm still a Discord rookie, to be honest. It's us old guys from the
me too.
forum days, yeah.
Yeah, it's like...
but it's good enough, and it works, and I have like, I don't know, 2,800 or something like members, and so it doesn't run itself. It's being run by the moderators and stuff like that. I'm still the one with the admin permission that can do stuff and move things around, but they have permissions to ban people and kick people and all that.
What about like your YouTube channel? How do you fit in the time to create the videos, and is it like meeting your expectations when you put them up? And
YouTube is a different story, because that of course takes time. But I'm trying to find a way to do it faster and better. And if you watch a lot of videos, there's these two things: you should quality over quantity, or quantity over quality. And I'm in the camp that says, well, I ended up in that camp saying, put a lot of stuff out there, because the quality will come with the quantity. Because the more times you do it, the better you get at it, and the faster you can do it, and the quality raises like that. So I have done some very edited devlogs with music and all that stuff, and lately have done much simpler devlogs, simply in the interest of time. I've done a playlist because I just released mod support for the game. I have a need often to answer a common question in a video showing how you do certain stuff. And that I just do that as a one recording. I open OBS, I'm setting stuff up, record, have background music playing, stream beats in the background, and then I just talk and show it off. If I got better at talking to the camera and explaining things. As you can also hear, I have a tendency of using too many words for something simple. So I'm working with that when doing these videos. So if I can be better at that and getting it down to the essence, it's also much faster for me to do videos, you know. So it's actually practicing speaking that is making it faster, you could say.
What do you use for both for the planning tool and for your repository? I think you mentioned it, but just
I'm using GitHub, and I'm using projects on GitHub with a simple Kanban and issues and stuff like that. But often I also use just the boards. I don't know if you're familiar with the Kanban boards in the projects in GitHub, but you can do cards that has no reference to an issue, or you can have an issue in the lanes. And if it's just small things, I just do a card because, and then when I do the changelog, I just have the done column, and then I just go over with human eyes, figuring out, okay, this is because many of the cards is internal stuff. It's not something that goes into the changelog because people don't have an interest in that, but they need to know that a new fireworks has been added or this bug has been fixed or whatever. And I'm going with the version, the year month release version. So 2021, 12, and I think 5 is the next one in my case, because that old school version 0.7 kind of indicates that your game is done at 1.0. But when is a game really finished? You know, most games today keep living on and be bug fixed and stuff like that. So that's why I early on actually took the other way around, inspired by Unity that uses the same. Because the version number to me is basically just it's an ongoing thing. So you can see this version was from December 2021 and it was release 5 in that month or whatever. And nothing that indicates the completeness because it will never be done.
Did you launch in early access or did you go straight for a proper release?
That was something I was talking with bunch of people, and also I'm a part of the GameDev Unlock. But he have a course, and I only joined that basically for his Reddit marketing stuff, which I ended up not using at all because Reddit is weird. But so I didn't use that at all. But anyway, I tried, didn't work, so it was like, I found something else. Where was I going with that? Early access, yeah. And I talked in there with some bunch of people and also on Twitter and stuff like that, because I was thinking, okay, going early access, you get early access, new game in early access. And then you get on Steam specifically, you get another round of, being released when you are releasing your game. So you get kind of 2 chances of getting on the front page of Steam, you could say, when you go into early access and when you go out of early access. But as David Wheeler very well said, well, the problem is that your hardcore fans will buy it on the early access. So when you get to the point where the game is actually launched, they already have the game. And to get on the front page of Steam, you need to have, I don't know exactly what is triggering that, but I think it's a combination of your numbers of wishlist, how well they convert, and how many you sell in a given period. So if you want to race on that top selling or new and trending thing and eventually end up in the big bar in the top of Steam, where my game actually ended when I released it. But the problem is, if you do it with the early access first, that hardcore fan base already got the game. So, and they are not buying it again, of course, they can't. Even though if they wanted to, they can't. So that was one argument for going straight to release. Another argument that I was talking with Jeff Weber about, he was actually saying that I was kind of devaluing my game by putting in early access, because he was actually saying this is more done than early access. Maybe it's not what you want, but it's actually a done game. You could release it and just leave it, basically. It was a good enough game as it were. I just had other plans for it, but basically, again, going back to the scoping of things, it was good enough. When I looked into the early access on Steam, they ask you a bunch of questions like, how is the the full release different from the early access? And then when I started and should fill out that, I was like, well, the early access will just go into being the release, because what people typically write is that, oh, the early access only have level 1 and the full game will have 20 levels. The problem is I'm one guy working on this. So if I have to do early access and then release with 20 more levels or 20 more whatever it could be in my game, I would have to have a break in a year where nothing happens, where I was working on that full game. So, that doesn't work when you are a single person. So I was like, I just release it and then update it. Who's gonna come back saying, well, this game has been too good now. It's been updating too much. Please go back. And if a person said that, you can just use branches in Steam, and you can just say to that person, yes, I made a branch from when you got it. You can play that version. Go ahead, be my guest. It will never be updated, but that's exactly what you bought. Be my guest.
How does that work actually with the branches? And can people play like an older version of the game then?
Yeah, in Steam, you can right-click on a game and go to properties, and then there is a little tab called betas. In there, as the developer, you can do public branches and you can do private ones with a code. I actually just have put a branch in now that is the latest version before mod support. So if somebody comes and plays and complains about mod support or whatever, they can just switch to that branch, and then the game is just exactly like before. And actually, behind the scenes, I'm pretty sure it is some kind of version control they're using. So in the backend, it actually called branches, but in the front end, it's called betas. And that's also what I'm using for the closed beta, for instance. And then they get a key in Discord, so they can unlock that branch and switch to that. So the closed beta group has, for the past 2 or 3 months, been a part of this mod and support thing I'm working on. So I just release updates to them. Just like a regular, just on a different branch.
And that's connected to a specific key that has access to the these
password.
alternative. Yeah.
Yeah, a password.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
you have to have the game.
Okay.
You have to have the game, of course. But
Yeah.
once you have the game unlocked on your Steam account, you can switch between all these.
Okay, so it doesn't matter which key you have. Any key can do it as long as you've got the password to unlock to log into that. Okay, nice.
Yeah.
I think that'll be. We haven't gotten to that point just yet with our game. So I think because we're discussing now how we're going to do like control deploys, and we have to roll out the server backend at the same time, and then how do we test it that it's stable enough? So we're going to get to that point, but it's interesting to hear how you've done it.
Yeah,
so.
when you add a backend server, that adds a little more complexity to it, because you cannot just switch around because it have to match and all that. So you're adding more complexity there. Yeah.
What version of Unity are you using?
I try actually to stay on the latest non-beta, you could say. After I release mod support, I'm not moving that much, because modders have to follow along and they are not super keen on updating Unity all the time. But I will push them to do it right away a lot, because in my previous projects, I didn't upgrade. And then suddenly you figure out you missed out on a lot of stuff. And going from version 2018 to 2020 is a big upgrade that you don't want to do. It's much easier if you do it as you go. So I tend to stay on the latest released version, non-beta version, which is like 2021 2 point something right now.
And which do you use which rendering pipeline do you use?
I used the standard one, and it was a very specific reason why, actually. The light render pipeline, or what it was called back then, the universal one, back when I started, was way too early. It didn't have shadows on spotlights. And for a Fireworks game, which have a lot of blinking lights, that shadow thing actually adds to the feeling somehow. It looks weird when it's not happening. Of course, if you take it to the very low quality, that goes away anyway. But it wasn't possible in the universal render pipeline. I think they just added it recently. So I might jump to it at some point, but it's working okay right now. One of the reasons to move to the universal pipelines should be, of course, performance, if there's anything to gain. And that I can use and mod supporters can use the, what is it called? Visual graph. Could benefit and make some awesome effects. One problem, though, with that is that the physics on the visual graphs are super basic. It can collide with planes or something like that. Crazy. Not that, all my particles in my game collide with everything, because performance would be terrible, but it still adds a little when you see something explode and some of the particles bounce off things a little, or explode when they hit and stuff like that. So it adds a little to the game, whereas going with the fully VFX virtual graph thing, it's just nothing collides. It's just fly all over the place. It performs better, of course, but it also looks a little weird. So
it's funny when you talk about it, because my experience has been very similar. When you come into the Universal Render Pipeline and the HDRP, it's for the URP, it's been so many things where I go, okay, I just need to do this now. It's like, okay, that's not supported. That's weird. Surely it must be. And I Google it and I go to like, no, okay, it doesn't support it. And it was a lot of stuff when it comes to like ambient occlusion, for example. It was another one. And there's been, I can't remember, the shader graph editor had lots of limitations. It couldn't do tessellation that I needed, and it couldn't, like, it was just thing after thing after thing it didn't support. So I was very surprised. And then I've gone into HDRP a few times and thought, okay, I'll have a look at this. And it's just like, okay, you need like a team of 5 or something to even understand the exposure stuff and like figure out what it works. It's so confusing, so weird.
Yeah, and it's also like 1.5 or 2 years since I looked into it, and there was also a lot of bugs and weird artifacts and warnings, and it was just like, I'm not spending time on this.
Yeah.
You know, the build-in, yes, it might not end up being as performant and good and as good as the new ones, but right now, that is the best one. You know, because it's battle tested, it works. You know. But of course, we are getting it. I haven't looked up on it for a while, but I'm from what I'm seeing, we are kind of, it's getting better. We're getting there. So let's see if I upgrade to it, or I will have to do a Fireworks Mania 2 at some point.
And how do you do with, if you could describe your architecture of your game in terms of your code, are you working according to any specific patterns, or like how is this structured?
Yeah, but the game has actually changed the structure a bit, not pattern-wise, but then a little again, as I did the mod support, because that, of course, that changed a lot of the architecture. I'm using assembly definitions to keep things separated in different projects, and it should also increase or decrease the build time when you hit play. I still think it takes like forever, so maybe I'm doing something wrong. But anyway, I like I like things to being divided, you know, as you would have in a normal solution with projects and stuff like that. I like that as being a developer. But up until the mod support, everything was in one Fireworks Mania project kind of there. But doing the mod support, I had to extract kind of the core things out. I have to extract out the common things that the modders needed access to. Like they needed access to the rocket behavior and cake behavior and some interfaces to be able to do stuff. So that was actually a big rewrite of the entire game, extracting these things out. Yeah, how do you build that and then end up with an assembly that you then include there and it can be extracted at? So that it was pretty complicated to do, but it works fine now. And I found a good solution with support for the UMod team, which is the package I'm using. There's a package called UMod that helps you with building mod tools and importing mods, basically. But they are only doing the heavy lifting of exporting stuff and importing stuff. Actually making it work in the game, like, you know, when you get this type of scriptable object, you have to do this to instantiate it or put it in the inventory and do a lot of stuff that you have to do yourself. But importing and exporting is done via this UMod thing. And that works pretty good. I'm using a message system a lot. I want to be able to communicate without being too coupled to each other. So they communicate via messages. For instance, when I play a sound, I use master audio as the asset for playing sounds, because it have a lot of performance things and you can do a lot of stuff so it doesn't play sounds on top of each other. And, you know, for instance, if you fire off a bunch of rockets, in theory it should maybe play 500 sounds. But first of all, it would sound terrible, and you wouldn't be able to hear the difference if you played 4 or 400, really. Other than the 400 would sound terrible. So I do some cheating where when a lot of stuff goes on, I only play a few of them and the latest sounds and stuff and the closest sound and stuff like that, to be able to stay within the limits of how much you can play. Anyway, so I use that for playing sounds. But to not have a dependency on that master audio package to play the sounds, I have this common message system. So when I play a sound, I just broadcast a message with some data, where to play it, what to play, blah, 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 blah. And then that other system picks up that message, no matter where it came from a mod or from the in-game code, and plays that sound at that point or whatever. So that message thing is something I use a lot for decoupling things, because it's something I still challenge with. But when you're doing enterprise applications, you want to, you know, separate things and you want to abstract things and stuff like that. And in game development, you don't want to do it to the exact same level because performance and also for easy, understandable things. I actually had a talk with Rob Lang. I don't know if you see him. He's building that big Ladybird mechanic robot game. Anyway, he's a good architect and a good developer, so I had a good talk with him about that. And he was actually saying, make it more simple. Put away your enterprise thoughts and try and make it simple. But still, there have to be some kind of abstraction of things. And one thing that I don't like about Unity is that in normal code, renaming and refactoring stuff is fairly simple. You can move things around with some tools and it can update reference and all that stuff. The problem with Unity is all that in-editor reference stuff. For instance, if you have a method in some class, where is that used from in Unity? You don't know. Find reference in scene. Yeah, but I have 5 scenes. How is that referenced? That's something I really have a struggle still with Unity, that there is some magic going on that I don't like, if that makes sense. It's hard to know where things are used always. So you just have this hierarchy with many objects. Which one are doing important things at startup? You don't know. Look at the script. Yeah, but there are 500 scripts on all these things. Which one does the managing of whatever stuff? So you have to come up with your own naming of things and putting them in the same place, so at least in your game, that it works like this. And then you have to remember those rules 6 months later when you need to do something different. But that's a challenge I still have with Unity. I don't know where we're coming from. We're just going off agenda here.
Yeah, no, that was exactly the type of question, because I think prototyping and getting objects in there and doing things in Unity is super simple. But as soon as you want to take that step to the next level, that's when it starts to get tricky to maintain it to be a sound project. I develop stuff, but I sort of make things work and I find solutions to it. But unfortunately, I don't come from a developer background, so a lot of the architectural parts I don't really understand or know how to do it. So I usually get into some troubles further down into a project the more I get into it. So for me, it's been really good to work with Christian, who's got like a 20-year enterprise development background. So he comes from web development, but he's extremely skilled in the architecture of software and how you build it. So I'm learning along the way, but I don't feel like that I can get to the point of doing the stuff that he does, but I understand why he does certain things. And I sort of take over and use all the stuff that he builds. For Line War, for example, we've to address the problem in Unity, we're using something called Zinject. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's like a dependency injection that's externally developed. So it shoots everything in with installer and everything's like pluggable and testable. That it works really good. I like the idea of it, but for me, it's so simple to just get stuff to work. Like I link it up in a prefab and I expose some like fields, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is how I work. But I definitely see the value in everything. Like the further down you get.
Yeah. The problem is you don't see the time you're saving in the future when you're doing that. But that's also me coming from a professional developer. I kind of can spot these things that I know will hurt 6 months from now. So that's also why, and I, of course, I have a hard time explaining my community sometimes because they are just gamers, most of them. Like, I have to clean up this, and yeah, but nothing is happening. Yeah, but I have to do this now because else I will be in pain in 6 months because this will be terrible to change afterwards. So I have to spend time on something that for the players makes no sense and don't add any value, but I as a developer knows that this have to be done now because it will be a disaster to do later on. I try to do it as good as I can. Again, it's a balance because again, you cannot get everything perfect, but it's important that you change something when you start seeing these smoking guns, so these problems that can happen in the future. But of course, that's something you get with experience and something you cannot, coming out, starting out making a first game, forget about all we just said for the past 10 minutes. Don't worry about that.
A lot of my viewers and stuff are people a lot of young kids that want to get into game development, and even people our age and older that want to switch over and do it for like fun. So I can give them advice up to a certain point where just make simple stuff, make it over and over again, prototype things, try to get things to move, try to step it to the next level, try to start gathering user input. But I think if you could recommend, like, for people that are starting to build games, in terms of what you said, like, forget what we just spoke about, what will your advice be how to tackle game development and release their first simple game on Steam or something?
Well, for the first part, a lot of what we just talked about for the past hour, I would forget about if you're just starting out. Because a lot of the stuff I have been talking about is, some of it at least, is when you get further down the line. So don't worry about that. Because when you're starting out, often starting out is motivation enough. Just building your game, getting your girlfriend or wife or friend to play it, that's enough. And that's how it should be. That's how we all started. So get there. And then once you are past that and you have done a simple little snake game or whatever, I'm saying just a snake game, that can also be very complicated. But, start simple. And when you think you have a simple thing you want to do, then cut it in half or more. And then do that. Once that is done, you can add on top of that. When you get past the totally initial starting of games, I think my biggest advice is actually that tiny step thing I mentioned earlier. Because that is where people stop, because they run out of steam. They get themselves into a corner where they are working on something and nothing is working and nothing is moving on. So that mindset of every little change is an important step. The problem is, if you're starting out, that can actually be hard to do and see. It is hard to build games. And don't be afraid, especially when you're starting out, don't be afraid to start over. Okay, that game, I ended up in a corner because I did this and this. Skip it. Make the same game from the start again. Because now you know what not to do. So build the same game or a different game, but maybe build the same game. In my case, a stupid little game like Parachute. You remember the one with the rocket and the airplanes and the parachute guys?
Yeah.
I think I've built that game 3 or 4 times in the early days.
Yeah.
Because, it's a simple to understand game, but it's complex enough to be hard to do. I built it in one engine. Boom, got it working. You got some points. People died. You could die. Boom. End of story. No levels, no nothing. Then I built again with the same rules. But then I changed kind of the graphics, built in a different engine, different code. But you know the pitfalls then. And that's very important. So if you have this small, let it be Snake or Parachute or whatever, one of these simple old school arcade games, build it again and again and again.
Funny you should mention that game in particular, because I did exactly the same thing and I built that game 3 times as well. And the problem comes, I think, with new graphics as well, because it was one was like 320 by 240 or whatever we did. CGA, I think, was my first attempt at that one, or EJ or something. So then you've got like a bunch of pixels and you shoot it and you go, woo, but the problem is, as graphics started to become better, I sort of got a bit carried away with that game. So I all right, so there's like a guy with a cannon, he shoots and there's like this character flapping his arms, and then okay, what if you do multiple hits? And I just ended up like bringing that game into, like, you couldn't put that in front of a kid's eyes because it was like guts and legs flying up. And it's like, okay.
But that's because then you had the basic game working, and then you added on top of that, and top of that, and top of that.
Yeah.
And maybe it ended not being super playable or too violent or whatever. But I'm sure you learned a lot by doing that.
Yeah.
And do it 3D, do it 2D, doesn't really matter. Do whatever you think you can do best when you're starting out. And I'm close to saying that it's actually today easier to do in 3D than 2D maybe. But Unity have become great at 2D too, and there's also these new Godot and stuff like that you could maybe use.
I'd like to ask a little bit more about the mod support. That's still a bit of a mystery to me. So, like, first of all, when did it occur for you that you were going to do mod support for it, and why?
Mod support and multiplayer and VR are the 3 biggest requests for the game. Well, also being able to save Fireworks. So the saving of Fireworks I have done, and now I've also done the mod support. So let's see if I can get the multiplayer working at some point. I haven't promised anyone anything because I know that can be a big deal. But let's see. Multiplayer makes sense. And VR for sure I have to do at some point. It would be stupid not to do that. Mod support was very, very requested. And I did it for multiple reasons. I, of course, did it because people were requesting it. But the reason they were requesting it was because they wanted more stuff. And as a solo game developer, I could quickly see that, with the amount of requests for this specific fireworks, can we get some of these? Can we get some of these? I could never, making one of these things actually take a long time. Back when I've done the first, I've spent like 6, 8, 10 hours on some of the cakes or batteries because I was new. Now I can do it a little quicker, but I have to learn this particle system, what works, what doesn't work, what things do you do to actually make it look like it explodes. And doing the 3D part, I'm the opposite of you. I'm less than 20 3D and then more than 80 developer. So I haven't used Blender before this game. So Blender was new to me, and that's also why low poly kind of fits, because I could see, okay, I can do that, I guess. And I'm still a rookie, but I can do stuff now, and I can edit I'm using the Cindy Studio packages for my environments, and I've figured out now how to get them in and fix some stuff so I can chop them off and explode them and stuff like that. So that's one thing that mod support would enable me, was to spend less time on new fireworks, because the community could take over that. Not that I'm not going to make more fireworks, but I would rather focus on making the foundation for making fireworks. For instance, right now the game doesn't have a shell behavior, like, a shell that you put physically in a tube that shoots up. That's something that's very requested. So what I think would make more sense is that I spend the time on making the logic for that and make a sample of that, make a few in the game, in the core game, and then let modders do their version on top of that, and let the community, which turns out to actually be better at making effects than me. And of course, they are much faster because they are only making the fireworks, and there are many more people, and they can spend much more time on each thing than I can, because I also have to worry about all the other stuff. And what people have done already with this simple mod tools I have now is amazing. I don't know if you tried any of it when you played the games today, but they have custom sounds, and the effects are, some of them are silly and stupid, just like the rest of the game. But what people actually want a lot of, apparently, is real world copies fireworks, like the real thing. And some of them looks really, really nice. Now from the next year here, from 2022, my goal is actually to just keep extending the mod tool so modders can do more. And then my plan for 2022 is actually to basically increase the quality general in the game. New UI, maybe controller support, more settings. People want to take down the shake. Somebody wants to add the field of view, and all these tiny things that just matures the game. Because I don't have to spend so much time on actually doing a bunch of fireworks, because the community is now doing that. The workshop I'm using is Mod.io. We can get back to that. But they treated me that we had 250,000 mod downloads in the first week from release. So that was pretty sick. I don't even know how many mods we have right now, but I think it's 70 or something like that. And some of them actually contains a lot of stuff. We have 94.
Do you mention that they need Unity to create mods, or is that like a scripted thing, or?
There was 1 or 2 guys doing mods for the game before I officially supported it. So they asked me, of course, if they could do it, and I was like, totally fine, as long as you don't, because they have to decompile the game to look at stuff and stuff like that. So I said, that's fine, just don't ship that, of course. I don't want the game to be cracked that way. Cracked versions is another thing that was kind of surprising to me. But anyway, these guys, perfect, they did it so right, and they included as they should, and they didn't change the game. They did some, so you have the basic game, and then you start an injector on the side, like old modding. That's the old mod technique, and then they inject code into the game so they can do a bunch of stuff. It can easily crack, and it's hard for them to do. It's not super easy, I suppose. I haven't done it myself, but I suppose not super easy. I would much rather like it to be official and have official support, because I can make it much better that way. And the reason that the way it works now is that, from a technical point of view, in Unity I have a tool, this UMod tool, where I can build mod tools, which is basically a Unity package. I then do some stuff because, and now we get into the package management of Unity, but the new thing is not to have Unity packages. The new thing is actually to have a package in the package manager. Like you can have this Git. So because I'm a developer and used to NuGet and stuff like that, I would say, okay, the new thing is this package thing. So I have to have my developer tools in this package manager via this Git link. Developers need to have Unity because I thought it makes sense to let the modders build it in Unity, because then they have the party, why should I build an editor when we have a perfectly good editor anyway? So simply put, they import that package and some dependencies that I sadly can't do automatic into Unity. And then in Unity, they basically have a folder, and all in that folder is included in the mod. In that mod tools, I have my core assembly, which expose some scriptable objects for the Fireworks types. It have some components for playing sound. It have a list of strings of sound in the game that they can use. They can't hear it in their version of Unity because the sound is of course not included, but they can pick it from a list, so it works in the game. So that's basically, then they are sitting and making. I have a specific structure of, you have to create what I call a Fireworks entity definition, which is a scriptable object, which is kind of the metadata around the fireworks, like the name of it, the prefab, the icon, the type, stuff like that. So they have to create that. Then they have to create a prefab with a bunch of components that I also provide, like a cake behavior, a rocket behavior, depending on what they want. And I also include some prefabs so they can reuse, like the fuse, for instance, and it have some logic for it to light up when you need to fuse and stuff like that. So they can just take that prefab and reuse that. But ideally, they could also create their own from scratch because I have the components in there, but I haven't done any documentation on doing the custom stuff. And they can also do custom scripting with some, of course, limitations in for security reasons. They can't do I/O and they cannot use pre-compiled assemblies and stuff like that, because I have to be able to check, that they don't do stuff that somebody will of course try at some point anyway. But I try to do what I can to avoid that. And then they sit in there building their fireworks, and then they build the mod, which result in a file called .mod. And then they place that in a folder, and then in the game I have done some logic, that when a map is loaded, it look at that folder for these mod files and then import them, and then look in these imported packages, which is underneath actually using the Unity asset bundles. I don't know anything about that, but that's what he told me, the guy who built that. But they're using that, so they are depending on native Unity features to do that serialization of in and out. And then I can add it to the inventory and show the icon and all that is included via the mods. In many games, when they are not officially mod support, you have to do stuff, put files in folders and stuff like that. And you can still do that in my game because, modders need to be able to do that when they're testing the mod. But for the regular players, I needed and wanted something that was super simple to do. And as the game is on Steam, the first choice was, of course, Workshop on Steam. And that was what people were asking for, because that's what people know. My problem is that my only experience as a player with the Steam Workshop is very bad. I used it some years ago with Ark, for instance, and that disconnection between the game and Steam was super confusing to me. So like, you join a server in Ark, and then it says, you need these mods, but it cannot download mods while the game is running. So you have to close the game for it to download and subscribe to a mod in the background in Steam that you have to know happens. Then it downloads that mod, then you try to join the server again, then you figure out that there's another mod, then you have to quit out again, and then do that for 100 gigabytes of mods. Pretty sure they have done it better afterwards. But anyway, my point is, I don't like that disconnection between the workshop and the game itself, that you have to browse in it. And I was watching some videos, and there was a YouTuber who said it pretty good. The benefits of using Steam Workshop stops and starts with it being in Steam. Because, of course, it's a benefit if you have a game on Steam that it's in there, it's built in, people knows it. And that's another point. It's really odd to integrate with as a developer. And you have to build your own tools for people to upload mods. You can't do that in Steam natively. But what if I want to put the game on Epic? What if I want to put it on some other thing? What if I want to port it to Switch or mobile or whatever? Or, you know, and that's exactly what happened to Ark, for instance. It's also out on Epic Games, but mod is not supported on Epic Games. So that's like, what the? So because I knew all these things, I was like, I'm not gonna use the Steam Workshop because I'm too tired and too married to one platform. I like Steam. It's not anything with that, but I would just like to be able to move and release it on something else. What if I do a VR version and want to put it on Oculus Store? And then I ended up something called Mod.io, which games like Deep Rock Galactic, which is another Danish game actually, Tabs, the totally accurate battle simulator, they all use Mod.io as their mod distribution platform. You can browse it in a browser, but there is also an in-game browser. So playing Fireworks Mania, you start up the game, and in there's a workshop button. You click that, and then you have, you browse the mods, click subscribe to the ones you want, and then it puts the files the right places, and you start a game and have the mod.
The alternative that I was thinking, but I like that approach that you've picked, and I think it's a really good way for people to allow extending the game, because I was thinking, okay, as a developer, you'd have to implement some sort of a scripting language where you expose all the types of different like particle systems, and like how many particles, how should they split, how should they do this and that and this. So it's funny to see your way to address that problem and go, okay, well, just let them build a prefab in Unity. And
yeah, C# works already, like Unity works already. Yeah. Why not use that?
That's a really good approach, I think. And then from what I understand, it ends up in one of those asset bundles in the end, and that the game can pick up, and that comes with, and that's why. But it requires a restart, right? Because it needs to compile any new scripts that are in that prefab.
You just need to restart the level.
Oh, restart the level. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Just like, so is it like a scene load that is required for that to build? Okay, interesting. Because we've been discussing mod support, and it's a common request for our game, for Line War. And the one concern that I have as a developer or as a maker of the game is that it becomes, like for us doing a multiplayer game, it would fragment the player pool. So like you'd have a big split where some mods become popular, and it's a bit confusing. So that's one of the great concerns. And I think for the like a longer term future for us, it makes sense to do it. That'd be probably a few years down the line, I'd say. For a game like yours, it'd be perfect. I mean, it makes really good sense that a lot of people with a lot of time on their hand and a lot of skills, and they want to be able to contribute to the game. And for you, like you said, you can focus on the stuff that builds that capability. Exactly. I think it's a real win-win, and I see very little risk in that sense.
Yeah, the only challenge I'm facing a challenge now is that it's much harder for me to do something extraordinary effect-wise now, because the models are so freaking good at it. So
you'll have to, maybe you can hire some of them to create some official packs.
Yeah, the problem is that I say used to, but it only been out 1 year, so I don't have any used to. But last year I created a 2021 cake that kind of shoots up with the 2021. Yeah. So this year people were saying, well, we need a 2022 cake now for this year. So yesterday and the day before, I was working on that cake, on the effect of that cake, and it was like it's not as good as all the mod things. So it's actually really hard for me to do stuff. So I just turned it out simple. Let's just do some flashy numbers, and then they can use that to say 2022. That's it. So that's actually a challenge. I didn't see coming that my own stuff starts to look a little because the models are so good at it. But I think it's a good problem to have, I guess.
I feel the same in my Discord often when I go in and I see what people are sharing, what they've created, and I feel like an imposter sometimes because I go, "That's a lot better than I do."
So yeah, but that's actually a very important game developer tip, is that none of us know anything.
No,
And remember, when you scroll through Twitter or whatever, Discord, you are seeing the peak of everybody. So don't feel bad because you didn't share anything or yours look worse. It doesn't matter. Compare to yourself. Compare the new stuff you did with the previous stuff you did, and then forget everybody else. Because it's not comparable anyway. And they might be very good at 3D modeling and you suck at it, but you are better at coding, or you get better ideas, or you can. And none of us know everything. And actually, the more you know, the stupider you feel, because the more you know that you don't know and you can't figure out. So
It's so funny here you say that, because it must be like the journey of like maturing and getting experience, because that's exactly the same feeling that I've got as well. Like the more you learn, the more you realize how little you know. So
the
like,
more stupid you feel, really.
Yeah. But then you get to the point where you feel less stupid, because you think, oh, well, I accept that that's the way it is.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I think it's some
And
really
that's the
good.
point you need to get to, where you say, yeah, I don't know that. I don't know.
Yeah.
And still also, for instance, people will look at me and say, oh, he did this game and it's so popular and it's amazing and everything. Yeah, that's fine. I have no idea how to do an animation in Unity. I haven't done any animation in Unity for this,
No.
So when I need to have some characters walk around at some point, I'm starting from scratch. I don't know anything about how it works. I have an idea, and of course I might get there a little faster than other because I have previous experience from other things, but really I have no knowledge about that. And there are millions of things in Unity I don't know anything about. That's how it is.
It's funny how that was one of the reflections that I had when I was playing the game, because I started to feel a little bit lonely after a while. It was funny to shoot off all the things, and then I was thinking, it's very like there's no other characters, and you'd think that they'd want to run for cover or like react to the explosions. But I totally understand why they're not there, because it's not like it is a fireworks simulator, so the focus is not on that, of course.
But I think I will get some people in there at some point, because it is requested, but I have to find a good way to do it. For instance, nobody can die in the game. First of all, no blood, nobody can die, because that will be a nightmare, and the rating of the game will be So we need some ragdolling and we need some stuff, but I also need that. I'm just thinking now, and if players are listening in here, it's not something that is coming in the near
promise.
future. But I would like it to be at some point that they walk around and then they see your fireworks. And then you could imagine you're down the road when you get to maybe some missions or career. I would like to do that at some point, because it could be kind of funny.
What are your plans now? Are you going to keep building and extending Fireworks Mania, or are you tempted to do another game, or what's your future like?
I have one idea for another game, which is totally different than Fireworks Mania, but it's not something I'm gonna do anywhere in the near future, because there are so much things I can do still with Fireworks Mania. For the core game, just for PC and everything, there's tons of stuff I can do. So I'm not burned out yet, so I'm just continuing. But it also helps, of course, again, the community. As the community grows, you get a lot of feedback. People love the game. That's also a part that fuels the motivation. And then also I can, right now it's only for Windows, and that's on purpose. It's because, because I know I want to add a lot of stuff, I need to iterate as fast as possible. If I did a Linux version, a Mac version, and a phone version, and a Switch version, these iterations that I'm doing quite quickly now would take way too long. So I'm not going to look into the porting, because people keep asking. First of all, there might be a problem with my game on a console, because I don't think that Sony and Microsoft want their CPU to burn, but I could solve that with some limitation in that version and stuff like that. I cannot iterate fast enough by supporting multiple platforms. So I'm sticking with one platform to be able to iterate as fast as possible. Once I get to a point where I say, okay, now it's good enough, and I don't have too much to add to the game anymore, then I can start looking into porting it. VR is also something that I think will be another game. It will be kind of Fireworks Mania VR, because there's some stuff that will be a lot of different, I think, with the graphics and stuff like that. But I have a long list of things, like multiplayer, for instance.
Yeah.
That's not a small one, right? Multiplayer in your game, you said you had first of all, what framework are you using for multiplayer? And you said you had a server. Isn't it just a one-to-one player game,
Yeah, it's a few. I can explain a little bit about it, because we're still, funny enough, running. Now we have to do that Unity upgrade, because Unity has been in the transition to a new network code framework for like 4 years or something, and they never release it, and it's stuck in preview, and it's poorly documented, and it's preview.
But
preview.
It seems like they're pushing it now, right?
They're finally doing now. So we're going to switch it up we have to migrate now. So we've actually but it shouldn't be too much of a problem for us. But we're still on 2018, the long-term support, which is actually expired just, so we're going to migrate now. So we're using UNet, which was the older one. We didn't want to go for a Photon or anything or any third party. We wanted to switch to the new supported Unity version when that came. So everything is built on our own serialization. So it's just a matter of switching out the connection logic and then having the serialization is going to be exactly the same in the game. It just shuffles it through a different like UDP like framework then. So we try to stick as much native Unity as we can without having to go for any third-party stuff. So that's what we'll be migrating that one to. We do run a server backend, and we had a lot of discussions about that, the pros and cons. I was more in the camp of let's do it peer-to-peer, because it is mostly it's like a one-to-one player. But there are two reasons why we're actually with the server infrastructure, or three reasons. One of them is for like to reduce cheating capabilities. You'll always have cheating issues, but our clients now are really stupid. All it does is take the input and how you draw the commands and fires it off to the server, and then you get lerps back with the same and type of events that's going on to present. So the only thing that the client can do is present those things and have stuff explode.
And your game is meant to be played with strangers, right?
Yeah, it's all well. You often I mostly play with the other developer, so it's like a built-in Steam. Like you can challenge, and it's quite fun to play against your friends because it's nearly like a board game experience where we can spend like an hour after a match talking about it. So it's really fun to play, but it's going to be competitive and it's going to be played by anyone and ladder systems and everything. So we really wanted to have that.
Okay. So cheating is a real concern because, for instance, my game, cheating doesn't matter. Because you will be, it's a silly game. There's no challenges. You will most of the time just be playing with your friends anyway. So if your friend cheated, you just have fun with that, I guess. So in my case, cheating is not a concern at all. But it makes sense in your case because you have high scores and ladders and statistics and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and if one person runs the server logic, it'd be very easy for them to run code to just accelerate their unit movement. Now, if they try to speed up like Unity or something, it'll just it'll chop instead because it'll speed up their graphics, but they only get the information as the server.
The server will put it back in place.
Yeah, but we might come to a conclusion for cost reasons because it costs a lot to run. We'll have one Linux server instance like trimmed down as possible, but a headless one that runs for 2 players. So we're building the scaling. That's pretty big thing right now. So we're going to spend quite a long time now just having the auto scaling. So like it'll start up instances and have those run. And I think we might
expensive.
We're also discussing how to monetize the game, and that's another big issue. Should we have a one-off payment? Should we have some sort of a subscription like a battle pass thing? Should we have a free to play and pay for content? Very difficult to make those decisions. We might come to a point where like a battle pass or some sort of a reoccurring fee grants you to play on the ranked ladders that are running on official game servers. Whereas if you just press play now, it might be a peer-to-peer solution. And in the beginning, it was a concern as well. We didn't really want the game logic to leak out because with the assemblies now as well, the client doesn't have any awareness of the server code. So all of the game core mechanics and logic and how the AI works and everything, it doesn't compile to the client. So that was another reason.
Because that I can tell you that will be decompiled right away.
Yeah.
Just a little story about. I thought crack games was kind of something you did in the 90s and the zeros, because back then a lot of games, at least here in Denmark, wasn't available. You couldn't get it, like even if you wanted. But today, very few countries, ban or block Steam or stuff like that. So I thought, well, I did a minor thing in Steam with the Steam SDK. So I kind of checked that people have it in their library, so you can't do the poor man's where you just download the game, buy it, copy it, and send it to your friend, and then he can play it. You can't do that because this is in. But for technical people, it's pretty easy to decompile the game, remove that part of the code, compile it, and then it works again without that check. But I didn't want to do more than that because it's a battle I cannot win anyway. None of the big companies can win it. I can't win it either. So I just do the poor man's solution, so it's not super easy. And then the ones who are cracking it, download cracked, most of them wouldn't buy the game anyway because either they're kids that with no money and not allowed to do it and stuff like that. So I don't think I'm losing ton of revenue on that. However, from the stats that I see in my Unity analytics, that's the only analytics I have. That's the Unity one. It looks like 6 times as many people are playing it cracked than bought it.
That many?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I did that comparison with, I can look at a day and I can see how it's not a super, but I can see, how many bought it one day. And then I can see in that statistic how many new players came in that day. Of course, it's not a one-to-one because people can have bought it and then started later on, blah, blah. But roughly. And doing that on different days, it looks like between 5 and 6 times as many people have it cracked than have bought it. And
I don't know how shocked I am over that because I remember, like you said, in the 90s and stuff when we were kids. Then, or I don't know, I even know how old you are, but I was a kid in the 80s and 90s. I mean, I think there was a lot of piracy then, and for me now, it's become like I wouldn't even think about not buying it because it's like, first of all, you can afford it, and it's nice to have everything working, and you don't have to worry about.
And you can actually get it. Back in the 90s and the zeros, a lot of games you couldn't get. You couldn't buy them. It was not possible to buy them. So today also, because computers are also connected to internet all the time, it's also much more risky getting these, because I'm sure all these cracked versions are filled with spyware, Bitcoin miners and all that. There was one guy in the Discord the other day saying, "Oh, my game keeps runs very, very low FPS," and he had a big machine, and then we're like, because people knows it in there, the modders, they were like, "What version are you on?" And then he was like, "It's this version." "Yeah, buy the game, then you will see." Because it's just, these, and I also actually saw one on stream playing. A lot of people, also YouTubers, some small YouTubers, have the cracked version and put up videos, and it's like, okay, it's advertising for the game anyway, but I can see that it's the cracked version. And then I saw one on the stream where the game just froze. And I didn't realize he was playing a cracked version. So I was like in the chat, "Oh, what did you do?" Because he was saying, "Yeah, I did it again." And I was like, "Okay, I'm the creator of it. What did you do for, to make it freeze?" And then I was showing the version number, and I was like, okay, close it and let Steam update, because you don't have the latest version. And then it was like, yeah. Nah, maybe I don't have it on Steam. And he was like, and his friend was on the call, and he was just laughing because he was caught by the creator. And then later on, that guy sent me a DM with a screenshot of it on Steam where he bought the game.
I think, I mean, it's a battle that we can't really win. I've when I sold my assets as well, I think we chatted about that like a year ago or something, or two. But it was weird. I mean, I saw the assets were getting sold in China, and they're getting sold for like $5 worth instead of 80, which, like you spent so many half a year developing every day. So it's a bit disheartening. But I think, like you said, like, when you come to the conclusion that a lot of people, that they wouldn't have bought it anyway, if it starts to generate issues, well, like for us with the servers, I mean, that would be lethal for us if
because they will connect to the same servers. But because you have that server, it's also very easy for you to just rule them out, because you can look at the version number and you can just say, "We can't you upgrade to latest version." Boom. And that's another thing, and that is actually how I am fighting back on the cracked version, on the cracked
adding content, or
exactly. The way I fight back is updating the game, because apparently these people that crack the game are not super interested in keeping up with updates all the time. And I love watching the comments on these cracked sites where people are just update the game, and just like for months they're just behind. So
that's exact same experience. It's so fun because and the more you update it, the more that people will realize, and it turns exactly. I've seen those. In the beginning, you spend a lot of time getting frustrated and reading about it, and like you said, the interest is there when something is new and released, and there's a hype about it. The crack comes so fast, and then the interest is gone, and then people are just left frustrated. So maybe some of those that actually truly like it, they'll buy it in the end anyway. So.
Yeah, and some people also say at least that they take the cracked version as a demo, and if they like it, they buy it. But I don't think I believe that.
No.
But it's also fair enough for kids and people who can't afford it. I can live with them getting the cracked version because they won't buy it anyway. But for adults with money living in country with access to Steam, it's just like, okay, how cheap can you be? It costs less. In Denmark, you cannot go to the movie theater and watch a movie, a single person, for the amount of money that the game costs.
No, and especially these days when my kids virtual items in games, I understand why that's such a big business, because they'll do anything. I'll try to like connect that to doing some chores in the house. If they want like 2,000 whatever it's called, Robux or something in Roblox, I'm like, yeah, well, it means helping out and cleaning the floor and like doing this and mopping. It's like, okay. And then they'll run around and do it. So
but then they also learn, they learn that these virtual things actually have a cost, a physical, you worked for that, or your wife worked for that, to be able to pay that. It's not like it's just, even because today kids are not seeing money, it's just like clicking a button. Okay, daddy paid for that. Yeah, but that number wasn't free. I did stuff to get that number so I can pay for stuff. So we are doing the same. We also doing the same.
Super excited. So thank you very much for taking the time and chatting, and I'll be happy to share it and share your story on the creation of Fireworks Mania. Super cool game. Everyone should get it, by the way, especially now when it's New Year's. And buy it from Steam, by the way. Don't look for any other part. Yeah,
cracked version is crap.
Yeah, exactly. I'll stop recording. Hope I actually caught this. It says it's recording, so I hope it actually got it all.
Else we just do it again. No problem.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's sign off and take care.
Yeah.